You're lucky we still keep you around. That was the first sentence he ever said to me that morning. No hello. No thanks. Just that. I remember staring at the screen, pretending not to hear, but my hands clenched under the desk. I wasn't angry yet, just confused. After everything I'd done, how could I still be disposable? Let me rewind. My name is Rachel. For the past 4 years, I've been the woman behind the curtain. No spotlight, no stage, just the quiet grind. First one in, last one out. While others were still pouring their first coffee, I was already deep into reports, prepping decks, triple-checking client contracts. There was Delta Corp, our riskiest deal ever. I worked 17 nights straight, sometimes sleeping on the office couch just to close it. Then Aurora, the most indecisive board of directors I'd ever met. I spent 3 months massaging every clause in the agreement until they finally signed. And most recently, Orion Group, a massive 2-year contract that practically saved our fiscal year. I flew across states, canceled family holidays, even missed my mother's surgery consultation to finalize it. But I never complained. Not once. I believed, foolishly perhaps, that hard work spoke for itself. So after landing those 3 back-to-back contracts, I thought, this is it. This is the moment they see me. I polished my pitch, ran the numbers again, and scheduled a meeting with Grant, the newly hired director who barely knew my name. I had everything laid out: revenue impact, growth metrics, client retention rates. It wasn't just about the raise. It was about finally being visible. That morning felt different. Not louder. Not busier. Just still. I stood outside the glass door, folder in hand, watching my own reflection in the tint. My blazer sat perfectly on my shoulders, my hair tucked neatly behind my ears, but my fingers tightened slightly around the edges of the file. Not from fear. From restraint. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't even excited. I was focused. For once, I wasn't going in to fix someone else's mess or sue the client or pick up the pieces behind the scenes. I was walking in, for me. For years of being the backbone without a name. Today, I wanted to be seen. Not celebrated, just seen. So I took one breath, just one, and reached for the handle. The door clicked open. Grant didn't even glance up as I stepped in. He sat at the head of the glass table, legs crossed, scrolling something on his phone. I waited until he finally looked up, briefly. No smile. No greeting. Let's make it quick, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. I swallowed and took my seat, sliding the folder toward him. I'll be brief, I said, keeping my voice steady. Over the past 12 months, I've overseen and closed 3 major contracts: Delta, Aurora, and Orion, collectively bringing in over $15 million in revenue. In each project, I led the team, managed risk, and secured long-term retention commitments. I'd like to formally request a salary review based on this performance. He stared at the folder like it was a napkin someone had left behind. Then he leaned back. You know, he said slowly, you really should be grateful you're still here. I blinked. Excuse me? He smirked. What you've done, sure, it's decent. But it's not like the rest of the team just sat around. Anyone here could have closed those deals. You just happened to be in the right place, right time. The air left the room. My palms were still on the table, but I couldn't feel them anymore. My breath caught somewhere in my throat. I opened my mouth to reply, something calm, something logical, but nothing came out. He stood, walking toward the window. Look, Rachel, he added over his shoulder, I've only been here a few months, but trust me, ambition's good. Entitlement? Not so much. I nodded once, out of habit, more than anything, and stood up. As I reached the door, I heard him murmur, almost as if to himself, "You people always want more." That was the moment. Not the numbers. Not the folder. Not even the insult. That sentence. "You people." He didn't just dismiss my work. He dismissed me. I walked out of the room without looking back. My hands were still trembling, but my eyes, dry. Focused. Something had shifted. Not just inside me, but around me. They thought they were in control. They had no idea what was coming. The door closed behind me with a soft click. But the sting from that meeting rang louder than any slam could. I tried to walk back to my desk with my head held high. But when you've just been made small, your body forgets how to take up space. As I passed the break room, I caught voices. Grant's voice, low, casual. His assistant, soft laugh. "She really walked in there like she was irreplaceable," he said. "Who does she think she is? Like this whole company would fall apart without her." He chuckled. His assistant did too. I didn't stop. I didn't flinch. But something inside me dropped, like glass off a ledge. It wasn't just what he said. It was how easily he said it. Like it was a joke. Like I was the joke. When I reached my desk, I sat down like I'd done 1,000 times before. But this time, I couldn't quite find myself in the chair. I opened my inbox out of habit. Stared at the subject lines blurring across the screen. Deadlines. Contracts. Follow-ups. Same as always, but nothing felt the same. Across the room, I spotted Darren. We used to share inside jokes and coffee runs. He helped me proofread my first pitch deck when I was new. Now he looked at me with a smirk, not angry, just amused, like he already knew the meeting hadn't gone well. Like maybe he'd even heard about it before I walked in. He leaned over and whispered something to a nearby analyst. She giggled, not loudly, just enough to be noticed. That was the worst part. Nothing was direct. No one came at me with sharpened words. They didn't have to. Their silence did the cutting. I'd spent years being the safety net. The go-to. The quiet storm that fixed everything without needing applause. Now I was alone in plain sight. Invisible, yet exposed. I looked down at my hands on the keyboard. Still steady. But they didn't feel like mine. In that moment, I realized something simple and sharp. If I stay silent, I'll disappear. They didn't need to fire me. They just needed to ignore me long enough that I'd start to question whether I belonged here at all. But I've rebuilt broken systems, salvaged dying contracts, and brought companies back from the brink. So if they wanted to act like I was nobody, maybe it was time I reminded the right people exactly who I was. I took the early train on Saturday. No laptop. No company phone. Just a small overnight bag and a guilt I'd been carrying for months. The last time I promised to visit my mother, I canceled the night before. The Orion contract was on the verge of collapse, and I told myself she'd understand. She always did. 3 flights canceled, 2 birthdays missed, 1 surgery consultation where she sat alone in a waiting room, waiting for a daughter who didn't show up. She never brought it up. That's what made it worse. When I arrived, she was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a pale blue blanket, tea in hand. She smiled as if nothing had changed, like I'd been there just last week. I wanted to say I was sorry. That I shouldn't have let work replace family. That no contract was worth this kind of distance. But the words stuck. So I sat beside her, said nothing, and just held her hand. Her skin felt colder than I remembered. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel busy. I felt empty. That night, in the quiet of my old bedroom, walls still covered with posters from a life before email, I opened my laptop. I wasn't angry anymore. Just awake. I pulled up my contact list and started typing. The first email went to Delta. Hi Amanda, I wanted to thank you again for the trust you placed in me throughout our recent project. If there's ever anything you need, questions, clarity, or support, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. I'm always happy to help. Warmly, Rachel. The second went to Aurora. The third to Orion. Same message. Warm, professional, purposefully vague. I didn't mention the company. I didn't mention Grant. But they'd notice. Because people remember who shows up, and who disappears. When I was done, I stared at the 3 open messages. My hand hovered over the trackpad for a moment. Then, with a steady breath, I hit send. 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 No fireworks. No immediate reply. Just a blinking cursor on a blank screen. But something had shifted, not in them, in me. Monday morning came like any other. The lights in the office flickered on at 7:45. The coffee machine hissed like always, and the keyboards began their quiet tapping chorus. No one looked at me differently. No one said a word. It was like nothing had happened. And maybe on the surface, nothing had. But inside me, everything had shifted. I walked in with steady steps, set my bag down like always, opened my laptop with the same practiced motion. But this time, I wasn't checking project updates or unread Slack messages. I was watching for the ripple. Because I'd cast a stone into still water. And stillness never lasts. By noon, my inbox was as silent as the floor around me. No replies, no calls, no whispers, just the hum of productivity and the low murmur of small talk. I kept my face neutral, my movements smooth. But something under my skin was buzzing. Not anxiety. Not panic. Readiness, like a storm cloud that hadn't cracked yet, but would. The hours dragged. I worked. I waited. Still nothing. By the time I left the office that evening, the sky had turned a deep steel gray. I walked home instead of taking the train. Needed air. Needed silence that wasn't forced. At home, I changed into an old sweatshirt and let myself move slowly for the first time in days. No meetings. No performance metrics. Just me, and quiet. I was rinsing a dish in the sink when the phone rang. The sound cut through the kitchen like a blade. Not a text. Not a notification. A call. I dried my hands, checked the screen, Delta Corporation. My pulse quickened, but I didn't let it show. Even to myself. I answered, Rachel speaking. There was no small talk. No fluff. Just a voice I knew well, Amanda, Delta's executive liaison. Her tone was sharp, unapologetic. Rachel, we've just been informed you're no longer overseeing our account. Is that accurate? I hesitated, only a beat. That's correct. Internal shift. A pause. Then we don't want anyone else. You've handled every step with precision, and our board has confidence in you, not your replacement. If you're not leading this project, we'll be forced to pause all further execution until the matter is resolved. It wasn't a threat. It was a decision. I thanked her for the call, hung up, and set the phone down on the counter. The silence in the room had changed. It was no longer the kind that made me feel small. It was the kind right before the structure starts to crack. The next morning, something had shifted. It wasn't loud, not yet, but it was there in the glances, the pacing, the low murmurs that slipped between cubicles like static. The air was no longer still. It was charged. At 9:12 a.m., my inbox pinged. Aurora Legal Team. Subject, immediate personnel request. I opened it slowly, almost ceremoniously. Dear Rachel. Following recent internal updates, we've been informed of a change in personnel overseeing our account. As per contract terms, any shift in key liaison requires our written approval, which was not sought, nor granted. We request that you remain in your current role for continuity and to prevent contractual breach. Kindly confirm by end of day. Respectfully. Aurora Board Operations. I stared at the screen for a second. Then smiled, just slightly. At 11:03 a.m., the receptionist delivered a courier envelope to my desk. Heavy cream stock. Sealed in gold foil. From Orion Group. Hand signed. We'd like to formally invite you to join our Asia Pacific Executive Committee as Senior Operations Director. Compensation package and relocation options enclosed. No meetings. No interviews. They weren't asking for my resume. They were asking for me. Across the floor, I noticed heads turning. Conversations dropped when I walked past. Someone stood from their desk to peek into the hallway before quickly sitting back down. The shift wasn't just happening behind closed doors. Now it was spreading. By 2 p.m., the energy in the office had frayed into open confusion. Grant scheduled a surprise check-in meeting. Urgent. All hands. I didn't attend. I wasn't required to. I wasn't part of his inner circle. But I could feel the pressure in his voice through the glass wall of the conference room. Sharper. Clipped. Louder than usual. He was scrambling. Something was slipping from his grip, and he couldn't see where it was going. I sat at my desk. Calm. Unreadable. While the storm gathered just feet away. Then I did something quiet. Deliberate. I printed all 3 correspondences, Aurora's demand, Delta's warning, and Orion's invitation. Heavy paper. Bold headers. Signatures and ink. I stacked them neatly, clipped them together, and slid them into a plain white envelope. No label. No flair. Just quiet truth, folded into silence. I tucked it into my bag. Didn't say a word. But I knew, this envelope didn't just carry paper. It carried weight. Monday morning arrived crisp and clear. The sky, a kind of calm blue that didn't match the tension sitting in my chest. I didn't rush. I didn't prepare a speech. I simply slipped the white envelope into my bag, zipped it closed, and walked through the glass doors of the office like it was any other day. But it wasn't. I passed coworkers who suddenly couldn't meet my eyes. The same ones who'd laughed quietly last week now stared at their screens with unnatural focus. Darren avoided me entirely. Good. At exactly 10 a.m., I walked down the hallway toward Grant's office. His door was slightly ajar. I knocked once and stepped inside. He looked up with that familiar smirk, half smug, half dismissive, but it didn't last. I didn't sit. I didn't explain. I walked up to his desk, pulled the envelope from my bag, and placed it directly in front of him. His brow furrowed. "What's this?" he asked. I didn't answer. He opened it slowly, still trying to maintain a sense of control. But as his eyes scanned the first page, Aurora's email, his jaw stiffened. By the second page, Delta's warning, his posture straightened. And when he reached the third, the formal invitation from Orion with my name bold at the top, his entire face shifted. The smirk vanished. So did the confidence. He looked up, blinking, like he was trying to reset his entire understanding of the room. Is this real?" he asked, his voice suddenly smaller. I tilted my head slightly. Not smug. Not cold. Just done. It's all real. He stared at the papers like they were foreign, like they couldn't possibly belong to someone like me. This changes everything, he muttered to himself. Why didn't you bring this to me sooner? We could've. I held up a hand, calm and steady. I'm not here for a negotiation. He froze. I'm not angry, Grant, I said. I'm just not silent anymore. He didn't respond, he couldn't. There wasn't anything left to say. I turned without waiting for a reaction and walked out the same way I came in. Quiet. Certain. No theatrics. But the silence I left behind wasn't the kind that faded. It was the kind that echoes. I didn't return to my desk after I left Grant's office. There was nothing there I needed anymore. Instead, I walked outside, let the cool air hit my face, and stood beneath the morning sun for a few quiet minutes, long enough to feel the weight begin to lift. Back inside, I sipped coffee slowly in the break room, listening to the office hum with nervous energy. The rumors were already moving faster than any memo. People had seen the envelope, seen Grant's reaction, seen me walk out calm, composed, untouched. He called me back an hour later. The tone in his voice wasn't commanding this time. It was careful. Rachel, can we talk privately? I walked in with my shoulders relaxed, no folder in hand, no notes, no need to prove anything. He gestured for me to sit. I didn't. He stood instead, no longer behind the desk, but beside it, like he was trying to level the field. Now that the ground had shifted. I've reviewed everything, he started. And I want to say, maybe I was too quick to judge your contributions. It's clear the clients trust you. That you've been an asset. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He continued, his voice picking up pace like he was chasing control again. I'm prepared to offer you a salary increase. Double what you're currently making. And a new role, lead client strategy. You'll report directly to the executive team. He paused, waiting for relief in my face. For gratitude. For the yes. It didn't come. I looked at him, really looked. For the first time, I didn't see authority. I saw fear cloaked in a proposal. Panic polished as opportunity. I'm sure that's a generous offer, I said softly. He nodded, relieved. It is. I tilted my head. But I'm not interested. He blinked. You're not? No. I used to think being recognized was the prize. That one day someone like you would finally see the work I put in and I'd feel whole. But now I know, freedom is the real reward. Not being allowed to speak, but choosing when and how to be heard. His mouth opened slightly, but no words followed. You can keep the title. The raise. The role, I said gently. I've already accepted something better. I turned toward the door. Rachel, he said, his voice lower now, almost pleading. We can still. You don't understand, I said, glancing over my shoulder. I'm not here to be fixed. I'm finished. And then I walked out. No big scene. No applause. Just the sound of heels on tile, steady and final. I didn't turn around, but I could feel it, the way he stood there, still. The weight of it all finally settling on his shoulders. He wasn't the center of the room anymore. I was. And I was already gone. It didn't take long. By Wednesday, Delta sent an official letter. All project activity was suspended until Rachel was reinstated, or replaced by someone of equal experience and a proven track record. Which, they made clear, no one else at the firm currently held. On Thursday, Aurora froze their funding pipeline entirely. No meetings. No movement. And certainly no trust. Their legal team cited breach of partnership terms due to unapproved personnel changes. But the real blow came Friday morning. Orion, calm, polished, and surgical, delivered 2 communications. One addressed to Grant's company, a full termination of their agreement, effective immediately. The second arrived in my inbox. We are pleased to confirm your appointment as Senior Director of Operations, APAC Region. Welcome aboard, Rachel. No extra words. No theatrics. Just a sealed fate, and a new beginning. Inside the office I'd left behind, chaos began to spread like cracks in old concrete. Slack channels were locked. Emergency meetings were called. And still, nothing could stop the spiral. Because this wasn't just a bad week. This was a reckoning. I didn't need to be there to witness it. The stories reached me anyway. Whispered messages. Screenshots. Forwarded emails. Like the one from the board, subject line in all caps, urgent governance review, immediate audit required. Grant was pulled from all strategic duties by end of day. Temporary reassignment, they said publicly. But inside, everyone knew what it meant. And then someone leaked the email that cracked it all open. Internal. Short. Brutal. Rachel's departure triggered everything. 5 words. That's all. The silence that used to erase me had become the sentence that defined the collapse. And I didn't have to lift a finger. No revenge. No sabotage. No shouting matches in boardrooms. Just clarity. Timing. And the undeniable truth of value once dismissed. I sat at my new desk that afternoon, top floor, corner window. A different city. A different rhythm. I stared out across the skyline. Somewhere, Grant was likely staring at a screen, reading legal memos, trying to find someone else to blame. But there was no one left to throw under the bus. Because the person he underestimated was the one holding the system together all along. The office was quiet. But not in the suffocating way I once knew. This quiet held space. Breath. Light. Sunlight poured in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long golden streaks across my desk. A fresh notepad. A sleek laptop. A nameplate that read, Rachel Lynn, Senior Director, APAC Operations. I sat down without rushing. No tightness in my chest. No second guessing. Just a steady sense of arrival. I opened my laptop. No alarms. No passive-aggressive emails. No meetings demanding I prove why I belonged here. Just a clean screen. Then, an email notification. Subject, welcome to the executive team. I clicked it open. Rachel, we're thrilled to have you on board. Your leadership style, strategic insight, and resilience speak volumes. Let's build something meaningful together. Warmly, the Orion team. No exclamation points. No corporate fluff. Just clarity. And respect. The kind of message that doesn't need to be loud to feel powerful. I leaned back in my chair, letting the sunlight warm my face. For the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel like I was behind, or catching up, or earning space in the room. I was simply here. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not to a boardroom. Not to a supervisor. Not even to myself. The past had shaped me, but it didn't define me. A phone rang softly on my desk. Orion's Global HQ. I answered without hesitation. This is Rachel. The voice on the other end was warm. Collaborative. Ready. We're prepping for the regional rollout. You good to lead the call? I smiled. Yes. I'm ready. Let's build it the right way. And with that, I stepped fully into the future. Not as a fixer. Not as a background player. But as a leader who chose herself, and built her own seat at the table. Sometimes the system isn't broken. It's built to keep you out. And sometimes, you don't need to fight for a place inside it. You just need to walk away, and build something better. If Rachel's story resonated with you, share your thoughts. Have you ever had to walk away to finally be seen? Drop your story in the comments. Send this to someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Your next chapter might start today. Let's write it right together.